Without a doubt, routers are one of the most versatile tools in a wood shop. They can be used for joinery, they can be used for decorative moulding, they can be used in jigs for lots of different bits and pieces. They can be used for planing. And the versatility of a router is only increased when you can add it into a router table. However, in my shop, the router table doesn't see that much use. It does get used, and when it is used, nothing can replace it, but it doesn't get used on every project. So the router table itself kind of gets in my way a bit. So to save on space, a common technique for particularly garage woodworkers is to have the router table built into the table saw. I've got this quite big 36-inch table saw. Why not make use of the space that's available? Not only that, I get the ease of use and accuracy of a T-square style fence, and that means I don't have to build the rails or any sort of mechanism like that to make my own router table. I can just simply add an auxiliary fence over top of that. So today I am going to make a router table for my Sawstop Contractor Saw. The Sawstop extension wings for the 36 and 56 and whatever sizes there are above that, once you get past the metal or the cast iron, phenolic resin over, I think it's chipboard, it could be plywood, could be MDF, doesn't really matter. It's strong and stable enough. So I'm going to route that out and put in one of these commercial aluminium plates, though you could certainly use one of the phenolic plates available or make your own. For me, this is the easiest solution, and it comes with these rings that you can replace for zero clearance. I've got my plate where I want it. I've put tape to give me a good marker. It's quite difficult to draw on this rather than if it was plywood or something like that. I use my fence to square that up, and now I need to route it out. I'm going to use my router with a guide bushing, which means that I need to set up a fence situation that the router can reference off, as well as having some spaces so I can actually use the router plate itself to give me the exact spacing to account for the difference in the router bushing, the router guide bushing and the router bit. In my case, I'm using a 19mm bushing and a 1/2 inch bit, so that difference is what these pieces of blackwood are. These are just my random spaces, and because my guide bushing is slightly more than 1/2 inch, I think it's about 13-14mm tall, that means that I need quite a tall fence for that to sit in rather than just using plywood. Luckily I've got a whole bunch of scraps at the moment, so I'm going to just use those and make up a fence. Then it was just a matter of routing around the perimeter at a few set depths until I was about 1mm deeper than the thickness of the insert. It's easier to adjust up than it is down. I drilled some pilot holes and then cut out the remainder with the jigsaw. There was a slight bit of unevenness in the MDF, which was cleaned up easily with a chisel. I marked out for where the locking screws would go, drilled through and secured it with the supplied M8 cap screws. Next, I could adjust the height of the insert with the included Allen key so it was flush with the table. To mount the router on the insert plate, I took the base plate off the router and with the help of double-sided tape stuck it to the insert plate. Then over at the drill press I could drill through the base plate to mark the exact locations. With the base plate removed, I used the correct size drill bit to drill all the way through, then countersunk the holes. I may want to use sleds and other accessories on the router table, so I wanted to add a mitre track. I set the fence to where I wanted it, placed the mitre track in position, and scribed out the location with my awl. I also transferred these lines onto the table saw front rail. Aluminium track is easily cut to length at the mitre saw. Mitre bars and sleds have runners that may be longer than the table, and it would bump into the table saw front fence rail. Most front rails will have notches for the mitre tracks on the cast iron portion of the table saw. Using the lines I scribed earlier, I drilled through the steel to create a rough U shape. I could then come back with the jigsaw and a metal cutting blade and connect the dots, so to speak. This is significantly less work on the jigsaw and blade. I then smoothed out the worst edges with a file. To protect the now raw metal, I used some enamel spray paint meant for metal. While that dried, I used a straight edge and a 1/2 inch spiral upcut bit to cut a groove in the extension table for the mitre track. This took several passes in depth and width, and that's mostly because the laminate on the top was so hard. The mitre track is then just secured with 2 screws. You can see that the mitre gauge that came with my saw slides easily through the track. Alright, I'm going to leave the video there. I didn't cover adding a switch. This is a switch that I salvaged as a safety style switch where you flick it on and then you've got the paddle to switch it off, and the router just plugs into that. That's a salvage switch. I'll be getting a different one sometime, I'm not sure when, and I'll cover installing that, but really it's just screwed to the side of the table saw extension wing, so you can probably figure out how to do that. I'm not going to show the winder adjustment mechanism on this router because it actually broke as I was doing various bits and pieces. I can't fix it. I've had a look and I can't see what's broken. So there is another router on order, but for now, it works. Very coarse adjustment. I don't have fine adjustments. I'm not really going to show it off in action just yet, but it still works as a router. Now, as it is, you wouldn't be able to use the table saw fence as a fence for the router because the bit would extend into this, as not all the time do you want the full bit exposed. I do have a fence that slides onto the table saw fence like so, and it has all the goodness like the regular sort of sliding fences, so you can expose more of the bit or not. And there will be a separate video for this which should be in this sort of area. Click and you can watch that, and there is a full set of plans for the fence, not for the rest, as that's sort of up to your materials and your saw to determine. So the full set of plans for this, not just the usual 3D model, but step-by-step instructions and cut lists and all of that, available on my website. Thanks for watching.